I know every day because I see my beautiful daughter's face around our home in my dreams, and I miss her very much. I'm going to read you a prepared statement. Today's ruling was yet another gut punch for so many of us who devastatingly lost our loved ones on that tragic Valentine's Day at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. 17 beautiful lives were cut short by murder. Heinous, pre-planned, torturous murder. And the monster that killed them gets to live another day. While this sentence fails to punish the perpetrator to the fullest extent of the law, it will not stop the mission of the families of Stand with Parkland to effect positive change at the federal, state, and local level to prevent school shooting tragedies from shattering other American families.
Tony, what did you think when you were hearing those verdicts being read? As it sunk in that this was a life sentence, not a death sentence recommendation, what were you and your wife Jennifer and everybody else thinking?
Well, I can only speak for myself and my wife since we've talked about it, but I'm sure some of the other families had similar thoughts. How can the mitigating factors make this shooter, who they recognized committed this terrible act, acts plural, shooting some victims more than once on a pass, pressing the barrel of his weapon to my daughter's chest, that doesn't outweigh that poor little, what's his name, had a tough upbringing? I mean, society has to really look and re-examine who and what is a victim. Not everyone's a victim. My beautiful Gina, the other sons, daughters, spouses, and fathers, they were the victims here. Our justice system should have been used to punish this shooter to the fullest extent of the law, not as an act of revenge, but to protect our nation's schools, to stop others from attacking the future of this country when they attack our schools.
Do you not see how it's possible that one juror could have found one mitigating factor?
If one juror was honest when they chose the jury, and they said they could see their way to the death penalty, and unanimously they all found that the aggravators were proven beyond a reasonable doubt, I think that one juror possibly perjured him or herself.
What message do you have to this jury, and does this send the wrong message to the nation? The nation is watching.
Well, again, what do we want as a society? Do we want people who commit atrocious acts against the future of our country to be punished to the fullest extent of the law? Or do we want to excuse them because they had a tough time growing up? I promise you, throughout this nation, there were people who had a more difficult time growing up than this shooter, who have been failed by the school system more than this shooter, and who have had less services provided than this shooter. And they did not choose to enter a school with a high-powered weapon and pull the trigger 139 individual times. That is cruel. That is thoughtful. And that should have been punished to the maximum extent of the law.
Tony, you
We
mentioned
know
this in
that,
your statement.
we know that the gunman studied other shootings, and now he gets life. For the next teenage gunman or the next young person who decides to get a gun and study and follow, what does a sentence like this do for the safety of other children?
I think that it puts all school children in jeopardy. It certainly sends the wrong message. This shooter did not deserve compassion. Did he show the compassion to Gina when he put the weapon against her chest and chose to pull that trigger? Or any of the other 3 times that he shot her? Was that compassionate? When we heard in his own words what he said regarding other victims, Meadow Pollock, Carol Ocken, Peter Wang. We heard what he said, what he thought. Was that a sympathetic figure?
Sorry. If they have done anything differently, I mean, in retrospect, do you wish they had acted differently either during the case or when they were insisting on going to trial?
I will say that the state did an excellent job. I haven't heard one of our families complain about the case they put on. They were factual. They were realistic. Their rebuttal was excellent. I just think people forget what facts are these days.
Tony, you said this in your statement a little bit, but what does this do for your efforts outside of the courtroom? How much work you've been putting in at state, national level? Does this reinvigorate what you're doing?
Well, Families with Stand with Parkland have always been dedicated to preventing other families from suffering through these horrific tragedies. Perhaps now we'll have to fight to make sure that victim impact statements, real victims, are taken into account. The real victim statements when you go through a penalty phase, so that we can all remember our loved ones, the kind, compassionate, innocent students and teachers that went to school that day and never returned to our loving families.
Are you going to be here for Scott Peterson's trial?
Had enough of the courtroom for a while, but I imagine that we will come back and do what we did here. We will all represent our loved ones. My wife Jennifer and I will make sure that we represent our beautiful, forever 14-year-old daughter Gina in any court proceeding. We will continue to put forth our efforts to secure her legacy through both Stand with Parkland and the work we do locally, statewide, and nationally, as well as the Gina Rose Montalto Memorial Foundation, which we set up to keep Gina's light shining in this world, because she should not have been extinguished by this monster.
We do live in a country and a state and a county where, a sizable part of the population does not believe the death penalty, that they believe that life in prison is fine for. Could you explain
I'll trade places with you.
Could you explain
I'll
why?
trade places with you. That's why.
Could you explain why?
I've answered it 3 times. Trade places with me, you'll change your mind.
Tony, does this change the way you feel about people in Broward County? I mean, do you feel that the community is letting you down in some way?
Yeah. Gina, my beautiful, kind, bubbly, bright daughter, deserved better than she got from the schools, and certainly from this jury, from our sheriff's office. She deserved better. Even from the FBI, who let us down. Let's not forget all the failures that led to this day. But the failures wouldn't have mattered if the shooter didn't choose to pull that trigger 139 times, to make a voluntary effort to pull that trigger, spewing death from that gun every time he pulled the trigger. Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Tony.
So sorry.
We also know we did.
I'm guessing you're all wanting me to react. I'm stunned. I'm devastated. There are 17 victims that did not receive justice today. My daughter, you'll notice she was the 16th of the 17 to be read today. She was shot running down a hallway. Now, what mitigating factor was it that they used on her? Were they going to suggest that he didn't have the fine motor skill to shoot that gun as she was running down the hallway? This jury failed our families today. But I will tell you, the monster's going to go to prison, and in prison, I hope and pray he receives the kind of mercy from prisoners that he showed to my daughter and the 16 others. He is going to go to prison, and he will die in prison. And I will be waiting to read the news on that. He should have received the death sentence today. There was no mercy for a murder that was planned over a long period of time. And that was, sadly, as proven by the state, executed. I don't know how this jury came to the conclusions that they did today, but 17 families did not receive justice. Because of what happened to our families, we are all in this position now of doing the work that we do around this country to keep this from happening to another family. And this decision today only makes it more likely that the next mass shooting will be attempted.
Tony, Fred, can you talk to us about what you were thinking when you realized that he was not going to get the death penalty?
I looked at my wife and I said shame, anger, devastation. Listen, I've gotten to know you and the others over the years. I've spent the past almost 5 years preparing myself for today, mentally, physically, because I visit my daughter in a cemetery. And the idea that there was at least one juror who I have to imagine didn't tell the truth to get on that jury, and who was never, ever, ever going to vote yes, because they agreed on all the aggravating factors. The truth is, the defense, for those of you who watched this trial as diligently as I did, the defense failed at mitigation. If you looked at the cross-examination, their witnesses fell apart. In the closing argument, the defense team actually referenced the neighbor, the guy who lived across the street, who spent one moment with that killer in their entire time. Okay, they did not prove mitigation, but yet a juror accepted the notion. A juror did not tell the truth to get on this jury, and because of that, 17 families have been failed, and it is what it is. This is the way the system works, right?
Do you think that they should have had maybe the trial outside of South Florida or Broward, if possible, and moved to another venue where you would got a fairer, maybe, or a different jury?
I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I can tell you this. The state did an amazing job of proving the aggravators. The state did everything they possibly could have done. I will also say the defense, to be a defense attorney in a situation like this I get it, you have a job, but it doesn't mean you need to lose your humanity towards the victims, which they did, okay? And their inability to ever, for a second, either in the courtroom or outside of the courtroom, have a human moment with us, a civil moment, was despicable. Looking at attorney Tamara Curtis take her middle finger and rub it up and down her cheek when she lost an argument in the courtroom, and then to start laughing with the killer over it like an immature punk child, I will never, ever, ever forgive that moment. But that's who they were. So I will tell you, the state did its job. Whether or not doing this in another county would have made a difference, you go through a lot of people to pick a jury. I don't know. I don't know.
What do you do moving forward? I know it wasn't going to bring any closure, and I know it makes your work just that much harder, and you're going to continue working hard. But, you know, him getting life would have been some sort of closure for these families. What do you do moving forward? How do you let go of this anger?
The first thing I do moving forward is I go visit my daughter at the cemetery because he killed her. And that's what I have to do. The next thing I do moving forward is everything I can to prevent the next one of these from happening. The next thing I do moving forward is everything I possibly can to remind people how important the next election is and voting, because we do have the ability to do things in this country to reduce gun violence through our vote, and we need to do them. So I'm going to continue doing what I do, and I'm going to go to the cemetery, and I'm going to tell my daughter what happened today, and I'm going to tell her I love her and always will.
Do you believe in any way a life over death sentence here? What message that encourages or discourages to the next young person who gets a gun out there and thinks about doing the same?
That person is planning a shooting now. Let's face it. And that person now believes that they can get away with it. I'm still, and some of you know me, I'm not often stunned, but I am stunned by this verdict today. And I think anyone planning a shooting right now sees that there's a path to avoid the death penalty where it does exist. And the death penalty does exist, by the way. There was no reason they couldn't impose it. But you know what? His defense counsel in the closing arguments made one of the most bizarre statements I've heard in a closing argument when she said, well, if you don't give him the death penalty, he'll just end up dying in prison anyway, of natural or some other causes. That was his defense counsel who said that. So right now, I'm hoping she got it right.
Fred, is there any sense of small relief that you don't have to go to that courtroom anymore? You don't have to see him anymore?
I would have gone to that courtroom every day the rest of my life to get the right justice. So, no. He did what he did. The only possibility for relief ended for me 5 years ago almost when he shot and killed my daughter. I was prepared for the rest of my life to seek justice, and I could not be more disappointed in what happened today. Anything else? Thank you all. G-U-T-T? Oh, Guttenberg. Thank you. I'm sorry? No. Sorry. Thank you all.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Hickson. My husband, Chris Hickson, was one of the murder victims. He was the adult that ran into the building to try to stop the shooter to do something to save other people. And I'm just completely devastated and shocked by this this verdict to me, what it says to me, what it says to my family, what it says to the other families is that his life meant more than the 17 that were murdered and the 17 that were shot and the thousands of people in that school, in that community that are terrorized and traumatized every single day. Even if every single one of those mitigating circumstances was true, which we all, I think, believe are not, but even if they were, how does any one of those mitigators outweigh those aggravating factors that they all agreed were true? How do you say, yes, it's cruel, that it was heinous, that it was planned, and we all agree on that, but oh, he might have had a mental illness or he had trouble growing up. I have a son with special needs. I have a son that checked all of those boxes, or a lot of those boxes, that the shooter did as well. And you know what? My son's not a murderer. My son is the sweetest person that you could ever meet. This person had services. He had love. He had the best upbringing his mother could give him. But even if he didn't, how does that outweigh cruel, heinous, planned? It doesn't. It just doesn't. I don't care who you are. There's no way that you could look at those mitigating circumstances and believe for 1 second that they outweigh the aggravators and that the life of that person is more important and more valuable than the life of the 17 that were taken, and all of the other people that live through that trauma every single day. So I'd like to say I have no words, but apparently I have a lot of them.
Debbie, for those jurors, if they will be watching this later, or do you want to know what went on in that deliberation room? Like, what were their thoughts?
I agree with what a lot of people have said. There has to have been someone who maybe thought they could. Maybe they did. I also believe in grace and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And maybe when they're sitting there and you're asking them questions and they think, yeah, I can do that. But when faced with that decision, that it just maybe was something they didn't have in their makeup to be able to do. But they really should have asked themselves that question harder before they agreed to sit on this jury.
Debbie, yesterday you told me that you thought that if there was a death penalty verdict, that would sort of allow you to perhaps close the door on the anger phase of what you've been through and move on to the healing phase. What are you thinking now?
Definitely that anger phase is going to take a little longer to move through. Because to me, like I said, here I am thinking that they're going through yes, yes, yes on those aggravators. How can you say yes to every single aggravator and then no to the death penalty? Beyond a reasonable doubt, they believe that they proved those mitigators. So it will have to be something I resolve within myself, with my family, because really right now it feels that his life is more valuable than Christopher's, and that is not true. Never.
Ms. Hickson, do you believe that the FBI, the Broward Sheriff's Office, and now the jury has failed your husband's heroism? Has failed him?
I do, in a lot of those instances. There was an opportunity to stop the shooter before he even got through figuring out his plan. BSO took a long time to get there, and now, again, someone else believes that someone's life is more valuable than my husband's, and that makes me, I can't even give you the right words how that makes me feel right now.
As a member of the school board now, do you think this makes it more difficult for the schools to stop this kind of event from taking place?
I don't know if it makes it more difficult for schools. We are working very hard to increase our security. It does, and it should say something to society that we have to look at who we allow to own firearms, how we address mental health in our communities, and where we give grace when it's warranted. So.
We don't know how many jurors wanted to go with life.
Correct.
discussion among the jurors to maybe sway others on death as opposed to the speed at which the jury came back here?
It's a good question. So clearly the aggravators were very easy to go through. I think all of us would agree that 100% were all 7 of them without a doubt completely proven. So in the defense, if you listened to the defense's closing statement, they basically told them that they couldn't, if one person said life, you were done. Like, you weren't allowed to have that. So honestly, I don't know how much of them are, what they're able to do, but it
Jurors
seemed...
have the opportunity to engage the other jurors.
Correct.
No, I want you to reconsider. Did you expect more of a debate within that jury room versus the speed at which they came back?
To be honest, I thought it would not take as long, because if you clearly saw the aggravating factors, that mitigating could never, there are some mitigating factors you could check off, but I personally don't see how one single one of them weighs heavier than any of those 7 aggravators. So I thought that it was done earlier or quickly, because they all said, yes, there are mitigating factors, but 100% they do not outweigh all of these aggravators that we did. So shocked at the outcome, but I didn't think it was going to take them a whole long time to do
And I
that.
have one other question, which is, I saw you leave the courtroom with your son. You told me in the past the difficulty of explaining to him about his father's death. What did you explain to him today, or how did you explain to him?
Of course, he was very upset, and more, I think, because he felt the room, us being upset in the room. But we just tried to explain to him also that this person is still being punished. So at the end of the day, I've said it a number of times, life or death, our life doesn't change at home. We don't have Chris. Our life, our family is not whole anymore, and we move through the process of how we get through each day. So this doesn't change what happens in our house. It changes emotionally how we feel about society. I think in general, the fact that you could think that someone who murdered 17 people because he had a mental illness, which I don't think any of us would disagree. There's no normal person that's going to do what he did. But that does not outweigh the aggravating factors that were proven in this case.
Debbie, what would you want to say to the shooter today if you could basically?
I think that he should give thanks to God that someone had grace and mercy for him that he did not share with those other people. And keep in mind, my husband was one of those that he came back and shot again, because Chris survived. He would have survived if he hadn't come and shot him the 3rd time. So I hope that he understands the gift that he's been given. I doubt that he will. But I do hope that he understands what that gift is, and that he's somehow able to take that and do something different than the trajectory he's been on for all of his life.
Did you believe in the death penalty before you got this stuff?
I did not. And I would have been one of those people that would have thought, we can rehabilitate people, that it's not up to us. And it's been a struggle for these last 4.5 years to feel so strongly that this person doesn't deserve to walk on the earth, but you find yourself in a different position and you change your mind. But it's a struggle, for sure.
Do you have any thought on why they wanted to see the gun? Did anything go through your mind? Did that signal anything to you? Did you feel more hopeful that it would be a death penalty?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Yes, because they had just asked about the the cross-examination where they were talking about trigger fingers and things of that nature, so to feel how heavy. Remember, 139 times he pulled that trigger in 7 minutes. So the idea that he was below average in being able to tap something is clearly not what's reality in this instance.
Do you think somebody wanted to feel the gun and to get an idea?
I would guess so. And, some people maybe just wanted to see it. Who knows? So, anyway. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
We also have Broward County's State Attorney Harold Pryor making his way to.
Hello. Thank you for being here. You know, this dreadful and horrific crimes committed by this school mass shooter in Parkland on Valentine's Day 2018, it's forever changed our community. It'll continue to impact us forever. The parents and families of the school children and staff members who were lost in this massacre, our hearts are with them. We hope that they know that all of us lost 17 wonderful people that day, and that our world is a poorer and sadder place without them. To the survivors, please know that you are not forgotten in this, and that we respect and salute your courage and all that you have endured. You know, when I was elected as Broward State Attorney, I promised that I would uphold the law. And I agreed that this community, not one person sitting in the office, should hear all the facts and all the evidence of this case, and that the community should make a decision about whether this mass killer should get the death penalty or life in prison. We thank the jurors for their service, for taking on this difficult task. We thank the law enforcement officers who went into the school. We thank the law enforcement officers who investigated this case and also arrested the killer. We thank our prosecutors and our prosecution team and the whole office for their dedication and service in ensuring that we presented all the facts and the evidence before the Broward County community. And we thank the courthouse staff. We also thank the witnesses. We thank the victims' families and the survivors for everything. As I spoke to some of the family members immediately after verdict, I thank them for their patience with us and their compassion. And I thank everyone who worked to ensure that the whole truth, the full story, was told about this tragedy with full transparency. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the full story of a community's loss and all of the relevant facts have been told about a mass shooting of this magnitude. We have not shied away from telling all of the horror, all of the loss, all of the devastation, all of the pain about this case. We hope that while there's no such thing as closure, there will never be closure. We'll never find closure. But I do hope that this will bring some measure of finality and justice to this terrible chapter.
Mr. Pryor?
Thank you.
Mr. Pryor, question, please.
No questions. I want to allow the families to be able to comment. It's about the families day. And so I will allow them to speak, and then we'll come back, okay?
We will.
Thank you.
We will come back?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's been 1,703 days since the murderer committed the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And if this was not the most perfect death penalty case, then why do we have the death penalty at all? There's no doubt about the fact that the verdict should have been the death penalty. I believe that our state's attorneys, okay, all of them, all of our state's attorneys, whether it be Mr. Sachs, whether it be Carolyn McCann, whether it be Jeff Marcus, Nicole, Stephen, Aaron, we could have not had a more perfect state's attorney group. No way. Mr. Sachs told me when we first learned that he was taking this case on, he said to me, I promise you that this will not just be another mass shooting. By the time we're finished with this case, every single person who was murdered, people will know who they are. They will not just be a name, but people will know exactly who they are, will know a face, and will know everything about them. And that's exactly what he did. You talk about being disappointed. We are all disappointed, okay, all of us, because they could not have done a better job. They could not have proven their case any better than they did. We all know their case was proven. But again, we have jurors, and there's no doubt in my mind that somewhere along when they chose their jury, they had to be told, I'm pretty sure, that, you know, they would consider the death penalty. Somewhere along the line, one of those jurors had to have said, I know he committed these crimes, I know he deserves to be punished, but I can't be the one to put someone to death. And that is the only way that we did not get the death penalty. My son was murdered along with 16 other people, and this animal, okay, still is going to now have life in prison without parole. And let me tell you something, as far as I'm concerned, he's probably going to get taken out sooner than later if he did get the death penalty. Because we know that a death penalty case, I believe in Florida, takes a lot longer. I think it's somewhere, the average is somewhere close to 18 years, okay? I'd certainly be dead and buried before he would be. So as far as I'm concerned, the fact that he's going to go into some sort of general population, he's going to have to look over his shoulder every minute of the rest of his life. Just the way the fear in him, I hope he has the fear in him every second of his life, just the way he gave that fear to every one of our loved ones who he murdered, or the students and people that he harmed. He should live in that fear, and he should be afraid every second of the day of his life.
Just to add, okay, about fear, this is what my son saw. He saw the gunman as he turned and pulled the trigger. This is what the jury didn't think was worth capital punishment. Answer me why, how, that my son be shot by this animal like this. People need to see this. This is real. This is not a game. This is not a video. This is not a TV or a movie. This is real. The last thing my son saw was the gunman aiming at him.
And let me tell you something, we're not going to stop. I'm going to tell every single person here, we will never stop fighting. We are never going to stop fighting so that these animals can't go into, whether it's schools, movie theaters, places of worship, you name it. We're going to fight with them so we don't have to keep looking over our shoulder and wondering when we send our kids to school or our loved ones go to work at school or go to work anywhere, okay, that we could possibly never speak to them again. We're going to continue to fight, and we're going to make sure that that AR-15 and those assault weapons that killed our loved ones are taken off the streets. And that's what we are going to continue to do. Because this should not happen to anyone else. This should never happen. We should not have to worry about, even ourselves, walking around the streets that somebody's going to murder us with a gun that they illegally own or legally own and have gone off the deep end somewhere and decided that they're going to take their anger out on someone else.
And this verdict today gives license to anyone who wants to claim they have a mental illness to kill people.
Sure, all I have to do is have a mental illness, not a problem, okay? One of my attorneys is going to do a mitigating factor that I'm a human being, okay? That's one of the mitigating factors. He's a human being, okay? And that gives him license to, him or her, license to go in and kill people. This is ridiculous. This should be the case that makes people stop and say, oh my God, I better not do that because I can get, I could get the death penalty. This is the case now, you know what? I can do it, not a problem, and I can get off and I can have life in prison without parole.
Do you believe that one juror or more lied to get on this jury?
I won't say lied.
No.
Maybe when they were originally questioned, they thought they could do it, but when push comes to shove, maybe they realized that they couldn't.
We can't damn the jurors. Come on. I mean, if that's how I come across, I apologize. These jurors sat there since July 18th, day in and day out. Let me tell you something. They're the people that we need to give therapy to, because here they are. They went into the 1200 building. They saw all the autopsy photos. They saw some things that we never got to see, and you certainly didn't get to see. I mean, they did their job, there's no doubt about it. But when push came to shove at the very end, like all of the aggravating factors, they all checked them all off. There was no doubt about that those aggravating factors were all checked off.
Some of the other parents, it seemed they were laughing at it.
I'm sorry, I can't. It's going to have to be one at a time. It's hard enough to hear one. I'm sorry?
Your husband once wrote in the Sun Sentinel about having to sit through this and relive it.
This was 3 years ago.
Let me ask
This
you
was,
this.
this
Wait
was,
a second.
yeah.
How do you feel about it now that you've gone through it?
3 years ago, I didn't know half, a third of what I know through the trial. If I knew what I know now, back then, I would never have said what I said. Okay, this animal deserves to die. He hunted all these people. He planned this for months. I didn't know that he had planned it for months when I wrote that article. No, I take back everything I said in that op-ed. He should die.
And you mentioned that some of the parents who preceded you did seem like they were very angry, lashing out at the individual jurors. But you're saying that you don't believe the jurors themselves got involved. And do you have any sort of understanding of how one of them could have found a mitigating factor to spare?
There is no mitigating factor at all that could overshadow, okay, the aggravating factors. There are just none. And I'm not sure, I mean, I can't speak for them, but I'm not sure that, you know, maybe an hour after we were all let out of the gallery, that people's emotions didn't come out in ways that maybe, I'm not sure that it's really anger at the jurors. It's anger at, you know, it's anger at the sentencing.
It's angry at the system.
Yeah, it's
okay?
angry, really.
It's
You
really
know,
angry at
I
the
mean,
system.
you can't go after a juror. They did their job. They went day in and day out. I mean, it's not easy, but totally anger at the system. I mean, I know we have a legal system, but is it just? I mean, let's ask ourselves that question. We certainly do have a legal system. I'm not sure it's so just all the time.
Justice was not served today.
We saw you looking at your son's picture in the courtroom. Moving forward, now feeling that justice may not have been served for your son. Is it any different for you when you look at that picture? I know there's no closure, but now are you even more angry or?
There's never closure, okay? This is a chapter that's closed. I'm not sure of the epilogue yet because I haven't really been able to process. It's a chapter that's closed. I'm never going to get closure. I'm never going to get my son back, whether it was the death penalty or a life in prison without parole. Scott's not coming back, okay? That's just the way it is. I mean, a little aside, if you notice when they were talking about Scott and she was talking about the counts, they had a little bit of tumult, you know? That was my son. There's no doubt that was my son telling us, you know what, Mom, I'm here. But as far as closure, there's no closure. There's no closure when your son is murdered, okay? There is not. And for me, the anger stays here. Every once in a while, the lid gets taken off, but the anger stays here. The anger is always going to be here. And I'm going to tell you something. I never thought that I could be so ugly inside, but I wait and welcome the day that I get that call that tells me that that murderer was murdered in prison. And that's going to be a very happy day in my life.
And just one more thing. They talk about the victims, the 17 people who were killed. Every person in the Parkland community is a victim. Everyone. So don't play that down at all, okay? On February 14th, 2018, everyone here was a victim. February 14th is also my daughter's birthday. Imagine how we celebrate or don't celebrate her birthday. Imagine the fact that some of her friends don't like to call her on her birthday because they don't know what to say. My birthday is February 16th. I was making funeral arrangements for our son on my birthday. Everybody is a victim. There are no survivors of a mass shooting. There's different levels of victimhood, if that's a word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Lynn Chen. I'm Peter Wang's cousin. I'm here with my aunt, Linda, over there. We are just shocked by this result, and it's just so unjust. I think many people, we thought there's a very clear cut, this monster killed 17 people. Like, how can that be, how can he live another day? And I feel a lot of jurors or the public do not really consider the factor of what happened, to the families, to the moms. My aunt has changed forever. She suffers from PTSD, and she constantly have hyperarousal. She cannot function normally. She cannot sleep, the constant insomnia. And we came here and thought that we could get a little comfort for my family, but no, they just pushed them further. And not just my aunt, all the moms that I saw in the fucking courtroom, they are suffering, and this result made them suffer even more. All the moms, now they are saying, okay, I guess this murderer who can murder my kid and still be alive. All their dads. They have to live knowing the fact that the murderer is in the jail every single day, breathing, eating, and getting help by their lawyers. Well, their kids was murdered on that day, and also, you know, they were murdered they got multiple shots. The shooter came back, and they are saying all the excuses about mental illness, not getting proper help. The murderer came back and repeatedly shoot at all the kids. What about the kids? What about the families? It's not about the shooter. Why can't I do something that's helping them? Also, in my knowledge, there have been at least 4 students committed fucking suicides. Suicides, we're not talking about that. These parents who are of these suicidal kids, where is their courtroom? That one juror or more made this decision, but the whole system do not know there's more people going to die. Suicide, more school shootings. This is insane, right? Everyone knows, right? This is insane. We need justice. All of your kids need justice. All of your kids in school. And now more people are getting motivated to do this shit. My aunt's dying. This monster literally said, I'm not going to say it, but he was happy to see people dying. He had a little smirk on his face today. We have been quiet. We've been trying to follow the law, believing the system would help us, but it didn't today.
Today, I believe justice was not done after spending months. Today, I believe justice was not done after spending months and months listening and hearing testimonies and looking at the murderer, his composure. I believe justice was not done. The wrong verdict was given out today. First, I want to thank Mr. Satz, Carolyn McCann, Jeff Marcus. They worked and worked tirelessly for us to find out today that we have been let down by the jury. I'm sorry, 17 people died, 14 beautiful children, 14, 3 adults dedicating their lives to educating children, died. And today we find out there's no justice for us. If this murderer had mental problems, he still managed to get a gun. He still managed to get an AR-15 to mow down our kids. Why was he allowed to get an AR-15? President Biden, it's been 4 years, and I've listened to countless shootings, one after another, traumatizing my family, traumatizing our neighborhood, traumatizing Parkland and Coral Springs, and today the wrong verdict was given. Someone killed 17 people, attempted to kill another 17, and we let them get away with it. We should have had the death sentence given out today because he took 17 lives and he attempted to take 17 more, and it could have even been more, and he planned it meticulously. And now you have sent the message out there to everyone. It's fine, get an AR-15, get a semi-automatic weapon, and you will just get off by pleading that you're insane. It's the wrong message. It's been years and years and years listening to the news, hearing nothing but shootings in this country. And today we let someone off that murdered 17 people in cold blood. How do you describe someone dying as bursting open their head? What kind of people are we? There should be an automatic penalty for someone that does that. All the 17 families are so angered. We had to listen to how he just came back and finished off our loved ones. There is no excuse in this country to have weapons of war on the streets. And if you do not get that, then something is wrong in this country. And there was one person with a gun on the school premises that day that my daughter died, and he did nothing to go into that building and to tackle that murderer. And I'm sorry, I have to say, as a black woman, I have to sit there and listen to black men being shot multiple times over and over again. And this animal killed 17 innocent, beautiful kids and 3 dedicated teachers, and he got away with it today, as far as I'm concerned. Anyone that listened to the testimony over these past months can see that he planned it, he executed it, and he just waltzed out of that building.
Do you believe that if he had been black, the outcome would have been different today?
Black men are mowed down. Innocent black men are mown down all the time. The attitude towards kids, black kids in school, it's different. I don't want to make this a racial thing, but from my experience, there's more aggression towards black kids. So, I don't know. I can't say anything about that, but maybe Scott Peterson would have gone in and taken him out. I don't know.
Ms. Ramsey, do you feel like the state let you down? Not the state attorneys, but the state of Florida, the jury system, the justice system?
Everything, everything. We moved from England, we came to this country. My daughter was a bright young girl. She couldn't even get into the gifted class because she was shut out. How do you get 100% on the test and get shut out? Everything in this country is just so wrong. Something needs to change. We need to do better. We need to do better.
What was it like to be sitting in there? You had to sit for 50 minutes listening to every single time, hearing everything, and it just, what was that like, those 50 minutes?
I didn't even listen to when the medical examiner was, I wanted a picture in my head of Helena, how bright, how beautiful, how fun she was. I didn't want that ruined by the murderer. The murderer has put images into all of our heads of the disgusting thing he did on that day. That's all I can say.
I figure you're going to be at Scott Peterson's trial?
If I can manage it, I don't know. This has been so exhausting. It's gone on for so long. Right now, I'm drained.
But you do hope he gets convicted for what he didn't do?
Yes, people are making excuses. Scott Israel said that he didn't have to engage. Why do you put that badge on? Why do you put that badge on if you're not going to go in and protect children?
Do you have any views on what happened with this jury? Not the aggravators, but yet the mitigators, do you have any views on the process or what could have happened?
I feel that the jury was convinced at the end when the when the defense team, especially the lady, kept on talking about soul. Oh, he had, you're going to have to think about this for the rest of your life if you give him the death penalty. They try to guilt trip, but they're not realizing that we have to live with this. We have to live with not having Helena in our lives. He is nothing to us. He's a monster. He doesn't deserve, as she said, grace and mercy. He doesn't deserve any of that. He's allowed to breathe, gets 3 meals a day. Where is my cousin? She's not here. I have to see my family go through the hell of this trial. We keep quiet because we're saying, okay, the system is good. We're going to get justice. It's obvious. 17 people, 17 children. And you cannot just say, give him the death penalty. This is going to be what's precedent? Because basically, they can just say, well, look at this case. He shot up 17 people. I only killed 1 person. Why should I get the death penalty?
Yeah, I can pretend.
I'm crazy. Oh, and then they were talking about the mother was drinking, and that's why, because in the womb, he's that way. There's plenty of people that have drunk and had kids, and they didn't turn out into killers. Mass murderers.
Want to go deeper. As you know, February 14th in general is a national celebration. You've heard from some that have said that, she had to deal with a sibling that died on her birthday. My uncle, that's his birthday. His daughter died.
On his birthday.
I had to deal with carrying my daughter in 2018 and delivering her in June, knowing that my aunt no longer has her daughter. It's not okay. And so now we walk away with, especially for those who work in the school system, my mom's been a teacher for over 15 years. Why should I give my life to a system where I have to now be cop, teacher, defender? Why? You're not paying me enough for this. The sacrifice and the burden that we've put on the school system by not rendering justice is huge. Who wants to lay down their, obviously you're going to do what you want to do, you're going to do, but it's a heavy burden that you're leaving and a heavy weight that you're leaving on these families. My daughter is 4, never got to meet her cousin. And this is how long this has been taking. And then today, to hear that, okay, well, he won't get parole, but he's going to just be able to be alive is more than disappointing.
Michelle Thomas.
My name's Sefina, Sefena Cooper. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
I just want to start off by saying thank you to the prosecutors. Every single one of them were beyond excellent. I never thought I would be in this position, but here we are, and we couldn't have asked, I believe everybody is in agreement, to have a better team than the team we have. We are in shock, disgusted. Something that is supposed to be extremely common, as all the other families have mentioned. How is this even possible? Are we standing here right now with this verdict when it should have been clear as day, extremely transparent, a death sentence? They've said it before, I'll say it now. If not now the death penalty, then when? When? And there is no excuse, nothing the defense said. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It shouldn't have been a case at all. No excuse for letting this piece of garbage breathe.
Well, here we are again, under these circumstances. We weren't expecting that this will be the verdict. The defendant accomplished his goal. The defendant made us feel bad, took us, our loved ones, away. The defendant saw the family suffering. The defendant fired 139 times, and he didn't do more because he didn't find anybody else to keep fighting. We are in a state that the death penalty is an option. After seeing the massacre that he did with all the 17th, plus other 17th, that they're crying and they're suffering, plus the entire community of Parkland, the entire community that belongs to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, that they live with this pain. Every single moment they're triggered with sounds is not served by death penalty. Why we have the death penalty as an option here in Florida? What is that for? That is my question. I am very proud to be having an amazing state team. They gave their passion. They came back from retirement. They believe that the justice has to be served. And it wasn't. I knew it wasn't because of them. It was because of one person wasn't agreed with the result. I can thank the jury. They were coming here day by day, as Linda said. But that was that person who disagreed, and he made that difference. And today we don't have the justice served because of that. That's very unfair, that everything has to happen just for one person that decided not to happen. So now we gotta keep going, and we gotta keep living, and we have to work our best to find our peace. We're not gonna let the defendant take more from us that he's been taking during all this time. I hope that you all respect our moments. This is something that we have to digest. We need to live with this new reality. We're ending this chapter. We are going to open a different one. We're not going to let that defendant take more away from us. That's for sure. And that's my advice to every single kid that was injured and they were lucky to be here today. Don't let the defendant take more away from you than he already did. So thank you for being covering all this time. I hope that you don't forget that this situation keeps happening every single day in the entire nation. And we need to serve justice everywhere. And everywhere, everybody needs to get the attention they need, because these situations are very painful for all of us. Mira, la sentencia de hoy fue algo que realmente no estábamos esperando. Las leyes de la Florida dan como opción la pena de muerte. Y este caso era el perfecto para determinar que la pena de muerte era la sentencia adecuada. Nosotros, las 17 personas que perdimos a nuestros seres queridos, hemos estado esperando durante todo este tiempo a que el trial, a que el juicio llegara. Todos los días nos sentamos allí esperando en nombre de nuestros amados y de aquellas otras familias que no podían hacerse presentes, porque es muy difícil estar dentro de un salón, dentro de una corte, escuchando tantas cosas que tú no te imaginas que puedes haber escuchado y que pasaron ese día.
Que no sabíamos que habían sucedido incluso.
Entonces, yo les quiero decir que si este juicio no merecía la pena de muerte, entonces la justicia y el sistema está fallando. Habrá que hacer reformas, pero entonces nos adaptamos. Pero no nos deje esa opción y después no la use cuando realmente el peso de la ley tiene que caer en un 100% por el caso que fue.
¿Qué mensaje le envía usted al jurado, a estas personas que consideraron que aunque habían todos los factores agravantes, no era como para darle la pena de muerte?
Mira, los abogados defensores se encargaron de alguna manera de manipular información antes de ellos ir a hacer las deliberaciones. El jurado hizo el trabajo que tenía que hacer, se lo agradecemos, todos lo entendemos, pero aquella persona que decidió a último momento que la pena de muerte no era indicada para él, mira, de aquí en adelante yo me imagino que tendrá en su mente y en su corazón mucho que cargar encima. Él tiene el peso de la injusticia que cometió ante 34 personas y toda una comunidad que no tuvo el chance de ver el peso de la ley sobre esa persona, o sea, al que defendiera, al defensor.
Y también un precedente que crea que una de las cosas que han estado diciendo los familiares de las víctimas, un precedente se omitió un terror que se causó que ahora la muerte.
Sí,
De
que
alguna
siga
manera
sucediendo.
exactamente, sigue sucediendo y que de alguna manera lo están apoyando. Entonces, mira, yo se lo voy a dejar en la conciencia de ellos porque no hay otra manera de que yo pueda hacer algo más. De nuestro lado, nosotros vamos a seguir tratando de traer conocimiento y hacer sentir a la gente la conciencia que hay que tener a la hora de hacer justicia.